Hello, I am Ellen Steger, President of the League of Women Voters of Richardson. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that never supports or opposes any candidate or political party. If you are interested in joining or donating to the League of Women Voters of Richardson, visit our website at lwvrichardson.org. Membership is open to women and men of all ages. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Richardson for candidates running for Richardson Independent School Board of Trustees at large, place 7. All registered voters living in Richardson ISD are eligible to vote in the place 7 election. This forum was recorded via Zoom during the first week in April without an audience. 7 candidates are running for Richardson ISD Board of Trustees, place 7. 2 forums are being held to avoid having so many candidates in one forum. This forum is for the candidates in ballot positions 1, 2, and 3. Candidates running for at-large place 7, ballot positions 4 through 7 are in another forum. More voter information may be found online at vote411.org and our website, lwvrichardson.org. Printed voters guides are now available. See our website for locations. Before we begin, I need to review the format for this forum. All candidates have agreed to abide by some basic ground rules, and as moderator, I have agreed to ensure that the ground rules are followed. The candidates will discuss their own positions on issues and not dwell on opponent's position or record. Will refrain from personal attacks or charges. Will answer the question that was asked and respect the time limits. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves, 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Candidates will rotate going first. The public was polled to supply questions for this forum. Requests were made on social media and on the Richardson League's website, as well as through emails. Many thanks to those who submitted questions. However, due to the number of questions submitted and the time limits of this forum, we are not able to ask all questions submitted. Questions have been screened according to the League of Women Voters of Texas Guide to Candidate Forums. The candidates have no prior knowledge of these questions. The timekeeper for this evening is from the League of Women Voters of Richardson and will be visible on the video at all times. The timekeeper will signal with a green sign when 30 seconds remain, with a yellow sign when 10 seconds remain, and with a red stop sign when time for answering the question has expired. Candidates, can you all see the timekeeper? Good. Okay. The candidates have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves. Introductions will be in ballot order. Nicole Foster, you are in ballot position 1, so you will go first. You have 1.5 minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Nicole Foster. I am a educator within Dallas ISD. I teach world history and African American studies. I am a doctoral candidate right now as well at Trinity Episcopal in Pittsburgh, where I study teaching theology through technology or pedagogy through technology. I want to run because my family is has a long history in RISD. All my siblings went to RISD. We're all products of that. I'm still very fond of and grateful for the education that I got. And I want to give back if I am privileged to. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nicole. Amanda Claire, you are next and you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Amanda Claire. I'm a wife, a mom, an Aggie, and an educator. I deeply believe in the power of education and what it can do to change a child's life trajectory. As an educator, I understand the importance and the burden we place on teachers each and every day to meet the needs of all of their students. As a district administrator, I know what it means to make district decisions that impact each and every individual campus, and doing so in a way that is demonstrating stewardship of taxpayer dollars. As a current consultant, I have the opportunity to partner with districts across the state and across the country on determining policies that have proven results for strong outcomes for students. And as a mother, I deeply understand the impact this has on our lives and on our children's lives. And I believe that I will be able to use the skill sets that I have learned through these different roles to have a stronger impact on Richardson ISD.
Thank you, Amanda. And then Blake Sawyer, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thanks, Ellen. My name is Blake Sawyer. I am also running for seat 7 of the Richardson ISD School Board. I have been a resident of Richardson for the last 12 years. We have 3 kids, a 12-year-old, 8-year-old, 12-year-old today, 8-year-old, and a almost 2-year-old. We are advocates there in our school. We have been part of our community, and just over the last couple of years have seen the need to advocate really well for our kids. And in the process of finding what's best for our kids, seeing that there's lots of other kids in the district that need somebody to stand up for them, that don't necessarily have the availability to have the advocates. And so that's why I'm here, to make sure that every student has the chance so that they can succeed. They can get a college degree, they can get a high school degree, they can get a successful career whenever they leave Richardson RISD. And the bigger part is that they can be a good citizen whenever they leave.
Okay, thank you. We'll now start the questions. Each of you has 1.5 minutes to answer each question. And Ms. Claire, you will go first on this one. The question is, what are the top 2 challenges facing Richardson ISD today? What would you do to address them?
Absolutely, great question. I would say the top 2 challenges facing Richardson ISD today are the performance that we see in reading and our academic performance in reading and math. And through that lens as well, the gaps that we see across different student groups in the district. Currently, 68% of white students read on grade level in 6th grade, which that number alone is not acceptable. But for Hispanic and Black students, those numbers are at 33 and 31%. So we have a gap in performance that has created inequities across our students groups. As far as what I would do as a board of trustee, while we don't get to determine the decisions made in the classroom or even at the district level, we set the policy and we approve the line items in the budget. And so I would focus on ensuring that each and every teacher has what they need through the budget process to ensure that resources are grounded in the science of reading and math and have proven results for each and every child, regardless of their background, but more importantly, ensure that the gaps between marginalized students and their peers are eliminated.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sawyer, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. So I think two of the biggest problems that we have is that our teachers are doing too many things in the classroom. Is one of them, and the other thing is that we have a lot of educational disparity that we need to make up for as well. In the 2024 plan that the board put forward, we say that by 2024 we're going to have 60% of our 3rd graders reading on level, and that's an increase from around 50%, 53% right now, which is not great. My son is one of those who struggled with reading in 3rd grade, and we advocated from kindergarten on, saying there was an issue with the way that he was reading and the issues that developed. And it wasn't until 3rd grade that we were able to get him tested for dyslexia, found that he had dyslexia, and that was an eye-opener. But that was an eye-opener for us and also for the rest of the district, to realize that not everybody in the district is having those people to advocate, to find those disparities, to find if there's a learning difference, or if there's an issue with English as a second language, or if there's 24 kids in a classroom, there's not enough time for one teacher to make sure that everyone is being cared for on an individual level, that every student has that person to advocate. And so if we can free up some of the resources that the teachers currently have so that they can focus on our kids, so that our curriculum can then focus on addressing their needs, that's what I would want.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Foster, you have a minute and a half.
Mute myself. Okay, thank you. I see two problems that I would like to address. One is the ratio of the demographics of students compared to the demographics of representation of their teachers. I think RSD could employ some hiring practices that would encourage a variety of demographic of teachers to be represented in the classroom. Therefore, it would make students who may be of those demographics or not able to digest the curriculum and maybe even identify with what is being taught versus having to translate in a intellectual way 3 times over. With that, I think we need to look at curriculum that does match the diversity. If you really think about it, Richardson is stellar in its numbers as far as being a diverse district. And I think we, as a suburb in North Dallas in the DFW Metroplex, have a great opportunity to capitalize on what we have and to really propel and be a standard for other districts in the region.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2, Mr. Sawyer, you will go first. Are you willing to change school attendance boundaries to address enrollment growth and lack of racial socioeconomic diversity at our elementary schools? Why or why not?
Great question. So I'm thinking through it now as we're talking. So I would say we definitely need to do whatever we can to make sure that every student has the same ability to learn, regardless of school district, or regardless of zip code, regardless of neighborhood. So some of the things we're doing, like the ACE schools, are trying to address some of those problems as well as some of the magnet problems. So I don't know if expanding the neighborhood districts out so that the neighborhood schools then get converted into more magnets, which I think is what the question is, would necessarily solve the problem. But I think that making sure that we have better parity at every school so that every school has the ability to create successful students would be a primary place that I would start.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, 1.5 minutes.
If I understand the question correctly, redrawing school lines within the districts to meet to adjust the economic and racial ratio, is that correct? I think that's going to have to come regardless, because if you look at the housing data for RSD, it is growing. We're expecting more students by 2024. There's more multifamily housing being built in several areas in the district, which changes things, changes the economic distribution and changes maybe the ethnic distribution. I don't know, it might. But because the city is one of the suburbs that's listed as growing, despite other suburbs, natural city planning would probably enact a redrawing or a situating certain areas within a school line.
Thank you. And Ms. Claire, 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'm always willing to engage in a conversation that is grounded in providing stronger student outcomes, greater support for students, and engages the community along the way. So in regards to this specific question, absolutely, I am willing to engage in that conversation with the goal that we are providing an opportunity and an environment that lends itself, that every student who walks through our doors has the opportunity to succeed, that it supports preparing them for college and the workforce, that it supports ensuring that our teachers have what they need, right? And this could be through class sizes, through the building and the building environment, and that it's fiscally responsible, right? We could think about it. We generally have two options when we're looking at space, to expand or to redraw. And I don't think there's a blanket one right answer, but I think we come to the table willing to engage in the conversation, grounding ourselves and research and what experts and what city planning tells us, so that we're making fiscally responsible decisions and in providing stronger outcomes for students.
Thank you. Question number 3, we'll start with Ms. Foster. Should COVID-19 and other vaccinations be required of students, teachers, and staff? Why or why not?
Great question. I think it's the revolving question of the last 2 years in education. I am a teacher, and I can only offer my experience and then go from there. I am vaccinated, recently vaccinated, but I have had to teach in person plus through and virtual at the same time all year. Have I felt safe in those situations 100% of the times? Absolutely not. But what I have done is put it on myself. Whatever people's beliefs are on vaccine or not, I put on myself to be vaccinated because I have a family and I have people that I need to take care of and make sure they're healthy, whether somebody else is vaccinated or not. But I think Richardson has done the best of their ability to institute health resources and health rules in schools to protect both teachers and students. But as far as making people take the vaccine, I'm not sure. Do I personally think it's a healthy environment for me as a teacher and for students? Yes. But I'm not going to say whether or not somebody should be forced to be vaccinated. I have chosen to be for my own health and for the health of my family.
Thank you. Ms. Claire, minute and a half.
Thank you. Great question, given the situation we're in. No, I do not believe that the vaccine should be mandatory or required. That is a decision for the family to make under the guidance of their doctor, or for the individual teacher and staff to make. With that in mind, what the district should do, and what as trustees we should do, is ensure that we have created spaces that keep our teachers and our students and our communities safe and in a learning environment that is setting them up for success, regardless of if they have received the vaccine or not. And we should do that under the guidance of epidemiologist experts, as well as academia experts, who can come together and say, what are the environments in which kids can learn best in a safe environment, for as long as this is an issue in which we need to address.
Thank you. And Mr. Sawyer, you have a minute and a half.
Thanks so much. So the vaccine is definitely a complicated question. I think that it's a personal option for most people, and I think that it's a good option for most people. From a personal perspective, my son's second grade teacher, while she was over the last fall, she got sick and passed away as a result of COVID-19. So that's definitely something that weighs heavy on all of us. But from a state and an official legal level, I think that saying that we are a public entity and saying that you have to get something done as a public entity may be more of a state question than it is a school district question. If you're a private organization and you're as a private organization making that requirement, I think that's an easier question than as a state run or a public entity to be able to say that everyone has to have this in order to participate in school. My hope is that by the fall, we'll be able to get back to some form of normalcy so that kids are able to interact on a more personal level without having to wear masks or talk through shields in the lunchroom. I hope that those are things that we can do. Those are things that I'd love for us to be able to do. And I know that the vaccine is one way to make that safe and possible for our teachers. So I encourage everybody to do it, but I don't think that it's a school board issue to force that.
Thank you. Question number 4, and Ms. Claire, we'll start with you. How would you recommend the district continue with face-to-face and online learning? And please elaborate.
Great question. I think that's the $1 million question, given our current state. So when we think about face-to-face and virtual learning, both are options that many of our families have explored in different ways. All of us at one time were virtual, and then we're given the option to decide which was best for our students. We know that many of our students learn better in a face-to-face environment. We do have a percentage that are learning and excelling in a virtual environment. And so I think the district should continue to explore both of those options, knowing that for some students, they have found success specifically in that virtual environment that they didn't see in that face-to-face environment. But when we look at our face-to-face environment, we know that we've dealt with a lot of issues that have come with the pandemic, thinking about, my peers have mentioned the barriers. And I think we need to really approach it from the lens of what is the best way for our students to engage in their learning? How are we doing it safely? How are we grounding ourselves in best practices that are supportive of students and of teachers and of the communities in which we engage in? And we do this by listening to our families, asking them what's working and what and changes that they'd like to make, and then grounding ourselves in best practices that have led to outcomes over the course of the last year.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, you have 1.5 minutes. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Sawyer, you have 1.5 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Now, could you repeat the question real quick? I know
Yes.
that'll eat in my time.
How would you recommend the district continue with face-to-face and online learning? Please elaborate.
Sure, absolutely. I think that this year was definitely an unusual year, and that as part of that unusual year, we definitely needed to make these provisions between online learning and in-person learning. And what we've seen over the last year is more and more students have started to come back into the classroom. There were some students that we lost, partially because the school plans of what in-person learning looked like were a little bit uncertain. I know when we went back to school, my kids went back in September, there was a lot of hesitancy of the first time there's an outbreak. Is the whole school going to close again? Are we going to be right back sitting around our kitchen table with a bunch of iPads? And so I'm thankful for the way that the schools have addressed things so far. I think that going forward, it would be preferable to have everybody sitting in the same classroom. It would definitely not be my goal for there to be a mixed learning situation in the same classroom. For kids to be sitting in a Zoom classroom while the same group of children are sitting in an in-person classroom, because it's difficult for the teacher to have to manage 2 sets of classrooms at the same time. And so whatever we do, we've got to make sure that it's freeing up our teachers to teach, it's freeing up our kids to learn.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Foster, you have 1.5 minutes.
Great, thank you. Again, like Amanda said, it's the $1 million question. I was pulled out to go virtual back in March of 2020, during the beginning of the shutdown. And then in September, we decided to do both in-person and virtual. I think this has been a learning curve this year. Could we have done things differently? Sure. I mean, who would have thought? But I think what we can do is really analyze what is it that is keeping kids home? What is it that is causing them to come to school? And what is their best learning practices for that student? For me, I have a lot of seniors. They don't show up either virtually or in class. They have gone to work because their parents have lost their jobs. And I think Richardson needs to kind of realize that we are, the last statistics for economically advantaged statistic was back in 2019, 2020, and Richardson is 56.9% economically disadvantaged. So I think it's more than just a decision to, I love virtual or I love in person. I think we have to kind of assess with the community what's actually going on and how we can help every student be successful, whether it's giving out laptops or iPads or setting up, 4 or 5G, I don't know, but those are some things we can think about.
Thank you. Your time is up. Question number 5, Mr. Sawyer, we will start with you. Considering the recent concerns regarding banning certain types of library books, how would you comment to a concerned parent? And what actions would you suggest be taken, if any?
I think that in reference to the certain books that we're talking about specifically, there needs to be a shared responsibility, but the primary responsibility for teaching our children about sexuality, I feel like should come from the home, should come from places of worship, should come from the different communities that people are involved in. When it comes to learning about things and being exposed to new objects, I would definitely prefer for our schools to teach our kids how to read and not necessarily teach kindergartners specific parts about the moral revolution that's happening here in the country. From a personal perspective, I think that every voice should have value and that everybody should be able to relate to the books that they read and be able to identify with that. But I think that those should be done in tandem with the schools, in tandem with the parents, and that shouldn't be a surprise to the schools and a surprise to the teachers and a surprise to the parents that these things are being brought in and how they're being discussed and how they're being developed, especially when our primary focus this year should be making sure that our kids are able to read on grade level.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. There's several ways to think about this. Number one, I am, kind of glad that people are concerned about books, because when I was in high school, we didn't venture into the library. Like we didn't checking out a book was not a priority. I'm glad that people are concerned about books. However, I understand people's moral dilemma with the type of books we're talking about. I'm an ordained person and I have this conversation all the time with people. I understand the concern. Is it teaching our kids because these books are in the library, or is it reading? Or is this a curriculum, or is this just information? And then on the other side, there does need to be representation. On the other side, there's a lot of LGBTQ kids that are suicidal or feel ashamed or alone at school and would maybe like that information or just to feel included in an informative way. So I get both sides. However, we are still a state-run entity. And so why I may be ordained and of a certain religion, that is not to impede upon public education.
Thank you. And Ms. Claire, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. So if having a conversation with a parent who is concerned about books, I would ground myself in reminding them that the goal of our libraries, of our school libraries, are to create inclusive learning environments that provide opportunity for students to learn about history, to learn about events, to learn about them from multiple lenses, to be exposed to the many different cultures of the world, of their community, the different religions, different characters, to be engaged with text, to see themselves as protagonists and heroes in the books and identify, and to learn about the different communities and the different identities that make up those communities. With that being said, I also think that it is the role of the district to ensure that they have informed parents of the literature and the content that is within our libraries, and that we are walking hand in hand with our parents to empower them to engage in conversations, but also giving them the opportunities to decide what is right for their child when it comes to checking books out. And this is for any content and for any piece of information. And that we are transparent and open, and that we see this as a bridge and opportunity to engage in discussion, and not a one-way street to push agendas or thoughts.
Thank you. The next question, Ms. Foster, we'll start with you. What, if any, mental health services should RISD provide to students? And please explain.
First, I want to acknowledge our counselors. They are stellar in what they do, yet they are overworked. Especially during the pandemic, there's so many issues with our students that our counselors just simply cannot touch or handle every situation. I do think that it is important to student learning that the district provides some kind of mental health care that's not just placed on our counselors on our campuses, whether it be partnering with an outside entity or talking with teachers or other leaders in the community. Mental health is vital to academic success. If we don't have mentally healthy kids, it's hard to focus. It's hard to read. Some things that we think are learning problems are actually not learning problems. There's an emotional issue going on with them, something may be happening at home. So I think for well-rounded education, I think we need to look at mental health resources for our students.
Thank you. And Ms. Claire, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. When I think about the impact of the pandemic and how it has resonated and shown up in our schools, I can't imagine we're walking through these last couple of months without thanking our counselors and all the hard work that they do in supporting our students. When I think about services, I think about services that the school district can provide into identifying concerns, being proactive, creating opportunities, again, to have an inclusive environment where students feel comfortable sharing concerns and being honest, but doing that in partner with the family and with the parents, so that, again, our parents are our students' greatest advocates. They are their biggest supporters, and they want what is absolutely best for their students. And so this is about partnering with our families when we identify concerns, knowing that our counselors are not necessarily licensed to support all of the mental health needs that many of our students, but we should support them in identifying how to identify those concerns so that they can partner with the families and identifying the resources that would support the child with his or her identified mental health need, and ensuring that they have an opportunity to be successful within our schools.
Thank you. And Mr. Sawyer, 1.5 minutes.
Thanks so much, Ellen. So I agree that school should be a place where not only kids are safe, but also a place where they feel safe. And a good part of that is having a person that they can trust, that they can go and talk to. I know growing up, it was Miss Howard. She was the counselor at my high school, and we would talk all the time when I would get overwhelmed with the amount of work that we would do at school. And she was there. She would always be there to talk, and she would always then reach back out to my parents just to give them an update of, hey, this is what's going on. You might check in on Blake at the end of the day. She's not a licensed counselor. She's not gonna provide any sort of medication or any sort of therapies along the lines that our school nurses may be able to provide a little bit of Tylenol if they get the okay from your parents. But I think that those are the things that are helpful to be able to have a place where kids can go and they can share and evaluate what those options are, how we can expand those options, and again, bring in the parents and families so that everybody is able to work together towards a problem, and that every child feels safe in school. not just that they are safe in school.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Claire. 4 RISD schools currently have Accelerated Campus Excellence, or ACE programs. Among other things, ACE provides free breakfast, lunch, and dinner to all students, after-school enrichment programs at no cost, and student culture routines. Should this program be extended to other schools? Why or why not? And if so, which other schools? Ms. Claire, you have a minute and a half.
So the goal behind our ACE programs ultimately is to address identified needs within the school community that are in some ways outside of the specific academic needs within the classroom, but that we know are heavy contributors to success. We have seen these to be highly successful and in many of the communities in which they have served. So my answer is yes and no. Like with all things, I firmly believe that there is not a silver bullet or a blanket one size fits all that will work for every community and for every school. And so what I would say is that we should identify the best practices from those ACE programs, but identify what those best practices are working, what root cause are they working to eliminate and ultimately support changing and contributing to positive outcomes for students. And then we take that same lens and we look at our campuses across Richardson ISD and say, we know that this component of the ACE program leads to this positive impact and it's rooted in this cause. And we look, where do we see those same root causes? And we take those proven successful initiatives and we put them on those campuses where they are. And considering that we have campuses across the district with needs and gaps, I would say there's components of.
Thank you. Mr. Sawyer, you have a minute and a half.
Thanks so much. I would look at the ACE programs and say that there has been a lot of success from what we've seen on the short term. I'd love to be able to see over a longer period of time what that success looks like and be able to identify what are we doing well, what can we take from those current ACE programs and expand out to underperforming schools, and also like what lessons can we learn of things that we should maybe just roll out to all of our schools. As a result, one of the good things that I like about the ACE program is the ability to identify those teachers that do a really good job at the schools that they're at, and then extend the offer for them to go and help in a new challenge. And that's one of the things that I think is a good benefit to the ACE program, because you take some of the best teachers in our district and you put them in those places where they're most needed. And so that I think is a component that we should look at continually. In terms of expanding it out into which schools specifically, I think that's a constant measurement tool. I think the grading system among the schools to identify where are our lowest performing schools, and then who are our highest performing teachers either at that school or at nearby schools that we could maybe add resources to be able to make those schools better, so that every student, regardless of zip code, has their best chance to succeed.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, a minute and a half.
About a year ago, there were some behavioral issues at the school that I teach at, and there's usually behavioral issues in secondary school during spring because the weather is nice, and so the kids start to act up. We talked about it in one of my classes. You know, what is it? Some students gave certain answers, gave a variety of answers. And one student answered that really hit me. He said, "Miss, most of the time we're just hungry. That's why our heads are down. That's why really can't concentrate. We're just hungry, Miss." And that just ripped me to shreds as a teacher. But it helped me realize just, number one, the amount of time that we have these kids in schools. It's a long time. And for, success of all students, it is vital that they get nutrition that's needed to even do what we are asking them to do, whether it be in the classroom or on the soccer field in athletics afterwards, or in, you know, their gaming clubs or whatever. But I think for well-rounded education and for the health and success of our students, you know, of course, we can't solve everything. Schools can't solve everything. Teachers can't solve everything. Administration can't. But I think we can look at the nutritional needs of our students and for their success.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin with Mr. Sawyer. The district recently created the Department of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, or EDI, and drafted an equity policy which includes a racial equity component. What changes, if any, are needed to achieve the goal of EDI? And please elaborate.
Absolutely. So I think the best part about that policy is that it goes and looks at the students on an individual level and says, what can we do on an individual level to make sure that every student, regardless of skin color, regardless of economic status, regardless of family education, regardless of family status, has that ability to succeed. And so where that steps in and where that says there are gaps, we need to go and we need to look and say, hey, if there is a gap based on the color of a person's skin or a family situation at home, like those are things we need to look at. If there are, if there are equity issues with identifying students who need special learning, students who are exceptional students who haven't been identified for some of those AP classes or gifted classes because they're in a school that's under-resourced for that. Those are things we need to look at to make sure that every student has the ability to get the best academic education that they can, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Ms. Foster, minute and a half.
I think EDI is very important. On one hand, it helps get to more of a precise teaching manner or teaching style for an educator, and it's able to kind of analyze the response of students. However, my experience with EDI is that many kids of color get missed when it comes to being placed in gifted or AP situations with that EDI. And a lot of that has to do with the type of curriculum or the manner in which the instructor is taught to teach or told to teach or whatever, or evaluated on. So while I think EDI is great, I think also we have some critiquing to do with it and identifying certain populations and their learning styles. And whether or not are they really, lower performing, or are they really very gifted in this way or this type of style of learning? So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. And Ms. Claire, minute and a half.
Awesome, thank you so much. When I think about the goal, I think about the words welcome and respect and value. And those stand out to me because those are feelings and attributes that I want every student, regardless of their background, to experience. So when I think about the goal and what that would achieve, right, that would eliminate these gaps that we see between marginalized student groups and their peers, access to activities and curriculum and resources that we know exist based on the data points that we see on our standardized testing. So I wouldn't change the goal. What I would do is I would really ground ourselves in how are we communicating that this goal is for each and every student in our district. That when we talk about equity isn't a zero-sum game. That it is about creating an environment for each and every student to be welcome, to be respected, to achieve to their fullest potential. And so I actually would focus not on changing the goal, but working on having clear communication and conversations with all of our families to understand the positive impact that this would have to each and every student in the RISD community.
Thank you. For the next question, Ms. Foster, you will go first. Do you support the RISD bond package, propositions A and B? Based on your review and understanding, what would you have liked to see in the bond that's not there? And what do you think should have been left out of the bond? You have a minute and a half.
All right. Yes, I agree. I'm gonna be honest. Yes, I agree with Bond A and Bond B. Bond B. And I like Bond A and B. At first seemed really expensive to me. That price kind of jolted me a bit. But when I thought about long-term situation of Richardson and the city planning that's going on, I realized that we've got to look that far ahead in the way this district is growing, the way it's changing. When you think about the statistics, now we're dealing with a lot of multi-generational households where there may be more children than just a single family household, or there's cousins involved, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And so I think that if we really gonna be honest with ourselves and the statistics for how this city is developing and changing, we do have to look that far ahead, and we do need to spend the money as much as that price tag may hurt, especially spend the money as it concerns technology. Pandemic has changed a lot. Does it mean that we're gonna throw out pen and paper? No. But does it mean that we're gonna have to adjust to what's happened? Absolutely. So we do need to spend money on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Claire, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. Yes, I do support the bond propositions that will be on the May 1st election ballot. Similar to what Nicole said, the bond supports the need for growth and infrastructure within the district. It will provide resources to ensure that our teachers have the resources and material and the curriculum needed to meet the needs of each and every student within their classroom. And it will do all of this, right, without increasing our tax rate, which is key when we think about being fiscally responsible. When I think about that question, is there something I would have liked to have seen in the bond? I wish that I would have seen a faster movement on the 6th grade transformation that paves the way for pre-K for all. We know that high quality pre-K creates a foundation to ensure that students are successful. 60% of students who are in a high quality pre-K grow 2 to 3 times faster than their peers who aren't exposed to high quality reading and math programs at that age. And so if we believe that pre-K is one of the key levers to closing the opportunity gaps for students, I wish we would have seen it more present in our bond package to make that happen sooner for the students and for our community.
Thank you. And Mr. Sawyer, minute and a half.
Thanks so much. I think overall, I would be supportive of both of the measures. I think that the reason to be supportive of them are because of the decisions that have already been made in the district. So for example, the pre-K for all was an example that got decided on several years back. And so that's a goal that we've been moving towards. Because of that, it means we need a place to put kids so that they have a classroom, they have a space that they can learn in. They need teachers, they need all of these different resources. And it's easier to expand a few junior highs than it is to expand every single elementary school. And so from a fiscally responsive perspective, that is the fiscally responsible thing to do. I do wish personally, my 6th grader is a very different person than an 8th grader. And so I am thankful right now that he is still in the elementary school zones. But I know that that's something that's gonna kind of be moving away. And so I'm a little saddened by that. I think advancing technology and making sure that the technology that we have stays current so that kids aren't disadvantaged because of the aging devices that they're on is a good perspective to have too. Again, I think the devices that they're on right now were given to us as part of a grant. And so now we're paying for the grant that we kind of agreed to a few years back.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Ms. Claire, you will start us off. This election completes the transition from all trustees being elected at large to the 5-2 system of 5 trustees elected in a single member district and 2 trustees elected at large. There are concerns that trustees elected from single member districts may advocate only for those people in their single district and not for the RISD as a whole. Do you think the new system will affect the functioning of the board? And how will representing the RISD as a whole shape your policy decisions? Ms. Claire, you have a minute and a half.
Awesome. Those are 2 very large questions. The first one I would tell you is that I personally have not seen evidence of trustees speaking only to their district. I see them talking from the lens of RISD and from our students, not these students, but our students. But that's the charge, that's the oath that they take. By moving to a single district member, it allows for a stronger guarantee that there's representation of all areas. And part of their charge is representing the district but that they serve and were elected by. At the same time, it's being a voice at the table, but making decisions that have and result in positive outcomes for each and every student across the district. It's important that we have both of those conversations and that we are taking a look at an individual level, but addressing it at a district level. As a former district administrator, this is something I've battled and had to make decisions about. I've had to make decisions that address the whole entire budget, but are ensuring ultimately that each and every campus has what they need in order to meet the needs of their individual students. And I did that by listening to people who represented those communities and had an understanding while taking that information hand in hand for a district decision.
Thank you. And Mr. Sawyer, you have a minute and a half.
Thanks so much. So I understand the concern that by moving from all 7 people looking out for what's best for everyone in the district to having 5 of those members who are specific to a district, I see that as a slight advantage to be able to have somebody that you could go to and say, hey, I want to advocate to somebody who lives in my neighborhood, who represents me because they go to the same school as me. Their kids go to the same school. Their future and their success of their family and my family are the same. And so by having the 5 different districts split up, it is a good way to advocate for every student in the district. At the same time, because I'm part of the at-large race right now, I do think that there is a good reason to have the oversight to look at the district at large, to say not just what is working in Prairie Creek or Hamilton Park or over in Spring Park, but what is working over in Berkner, what is working in Pierce, and being able to have a holistic approach to be able to say overall what are the needs of the district, and we have those 2 people specifically set and tasked with looking at the entire district and not just within your own neighborhood. So there's benefits to both.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, you have a minute and a half.
I agree with both the candidates that just spoke. I think it's an advantage. I think that having an accurate look at certain districts helps make a healthy decision for the entire district. Like what Blake said, Prairie Creek is not Hamilton Park, and Hamilton Park is not Prairie Creek. What are the issues in those schools that we need to address? Making a blanket decision that doesn't see certain aspects of the district is a lazy decision to make. It has not done the work to really assess how can we really make this district better. So I think it's an absolute advantage for us who are running for at large position. I think we have a lot of listening to do, a lot of research to do, being that we are at large. And making decisions based on the needs of what we've listened to and what we've known, and help make decisions for the district based on that. But yes, the it adds diversity and a holistic view of what we truly are as a school district.
Thank you. Looks like we are coming up on an hour, pretty close, so that will be our last question. So we will move to closing statements. Closing statements will be given in reverse ballot order. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and we will start with Mr. Sawyer.
All right. So thank you guys so much for your time. It's been great just to be able to share kind of my passion for what the schools are doing, for how we can do those better, how we can take an active role in advocating for every student in the district. I know that great teachers, when they're properly resourced, can do great things with kids. Part of the reason I know that is because I can remember my high school history teacher, who not only taught me American history, but he taught me how to critically think about those subjects. I remember my elementary school teacher who saw something in me and said, "Hey, this is somebody that we need to make sure that they are able to excel in math and sciences and be able to take that investment." When teachers are freed up to do those things, every student should be able to succeed. In terms of why you should vote for me, I think like having kids in the district, being able to be an advocate, having already advocated on the district level for specifically when it came to technology and being on the technology advisory committee, serving in the ways that I've served in my employment over the last 12 years, whether it's working at a church to provide hope for those who are looking for it, whether it's working at a police department where my job was to advocate for those people who've had their worst day, or whether it's being a foster parent. And our goal was to make sure that every student or every child that came into our home had a safe place to live, and that those parents that were working to have their kids back felt the hope that they could do that and that they could succeed, and being able to have those relationships afterwards. So I'm really thankful again for this time. I appreciate the League of Women Voters and everything they've done to put this together.
And Miss Claire, 2 minutes for a closing.
Well, thank you so much for your time this evening and allowing for the three of us to all engage, or I guess 5 of us, excuse me, to engage in quality conversation on issues facing our district. I believe a whole heck of a lot in traditional public schools. I'm a product of traditional public schools. I was a teacher in traditional public schools, and my kids attend, 2 of my kids who are school age attend Richardson ISD, and a third one will eventually be there. I believe in the power of education and the trajectory change it can make for students. I believe we have incredibly hardworking students, hardworking teachers, families who send their absolute best to us every day in the form of their students, and a district who cares very, very deeply about achieving high outcomes for students. But the reality is that's not where we're at as a district. We're not there yet. We've started and created the foundation in the board goals and the policies that we're setting. And so we need to take it a step further, and we need to be able to engage in deep conversations around what this means for equitable outcomes for each and every student. And I believe that my experience as a teacher, a district admin, and now a consultant will bring that to the table to help empower the board and support and partner with Dr. Stone and her team to identifying what does it mean to ensure each and every student reaches the goal that they are ready for college and a career when they leave our doors. And I know all of us would be ecstatic to see you at the polls on May 19th, but I hope that you'll consider me when you vote on May 19th. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And Ms. Foster, you have 2 minutes for a closing.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I do want to say my parents moved down here in the mid-'80s and from Kansas City, Kansas, and they were told to move to Richardson for the schools. So Richardson ISD has a reputation that I don't think current members realize. And so they moved to Richardson. we had to, if we moved, we had to move inside of RISD attending zone and still go to Richardson schools. So I believe in the education that this district continues to provide. As a teacher, I do want to say, while I am an advocate for kids, which is a lot of the focal point for many boards, I am a huge advocate also for teachers. You cannot have a healthy classroom if that teacher is out of sync or is not supported, or who is not paid in a dignified manner. So I do support teachers, and I want teachers in RSD to know that, because that will help students succeed. I do not have a child in the district. I am an alpha aunt. I'm a part-time caretaker of a baby niece, which I'm very proud of. So I am not for one particular school. And I think that will help me in an at-large position. I do want to give props to both Amanda and Blake. They are great people. I mean, they will serve well if they are elected. These are people I believe that you could have coffee with and they will listen to you. So RSD is in good hands. Why vote for me? I know education. As an educator and as a minister, I'm a listener. I'm a listener particularly for voices that are pushed under the rug or not well listened to. So anyway, I hope to see everybody May 1st, and good luck to everyone here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to all three of our candidates. This has been very informative. I do want to share my screen here. Early voting in person begins on Monday, April the 19th and continues through Tuesday, April the 27th. You must have already registered in order to vote in the May 1st joint election. The deadline to register to vote was April 1st. Remember, this forum was for candidates running in at-large place 7, ballot positions 1, 2, and 3 only. To see the candidates running in ballot positions 4 through 7, see the other League of Women Voters of Richardson's Place 7 forum. Make sure you exercise your right to vote, and thank you for watching.